Hello and welcome to Bar 10, where it's our goal to help you prepare for the bar exam as well as your everyday law school experience, just a few minutes at a time. Today's episode is dedicated to things that I wish I knew back when I started law school in the early 2000s. My wife just recently graduated law school a few years back, so I had the opportunity to relive it and, in essence, figure out a better way to approach some of the problems that I myself had as a law student in the early 2000s. Now, that being said, you may know some of these tricks or be familiar with these hacks already. That being said, the ones that you don't know, I hope are helpful to you. If they are helpful to you, please comment down below which ones were helpful, which ones were not helpful, and or please make any suggestions for any ideas that you might have for things that might be helpful to our viewers. That being said, let's get right into the first suggestion or the first hack. The first hack that we're going to talk about today is near and dear to my heart. As a kid, I always played this game where you talked about which superpower you wish you had, and mine was always the ability to foretell the future. Now, I can't promise you that we're going to be able to help you foretell the future, but that being said, we can help you or come pretty close to it with our first suggestion. Our first suggestion is a website called Rate My Professor. You might be familiar with it from undergrad because it is valid for undergraduate school as well, but it's a fantastic resource which lets you get a very clear understanding of what your professor is like before you ever sit in their classroom. There's a particular professor from my wife's law school named Professor Crawford. She went to Pace Law School, if anyone is concerned. So I will ask this site, Rate My Professor, anything about Professor Crawford at Pace Law. It immediately brings up a B. Crawford. Seems to be the only option, so I'm going to guess that's her. 100% of the students mentioned they would take her again. That's out of how many ratings? Let's see. Well, it doesn't seem to tell us just yet. There we go, 41 ratings. And she gets a 4.7 out of 5. 2.9 out of 5 for difficulty. That means one of two things. Either her tests are extremely easy or she teaches the material so well that the students come away with a very good understanding of the material. Go lower here on our screen, sorry about that pop-up, and we can see that the first student that did a review was for Wills 101. Rated her awesome and noted Professor Crawford is one of the most down-to-earth law professors I ever had the pleasure of knowing. She truly is one of a kind, especially in this legal journey. She cares about her students to the core and appreciates those with outwardly unique benefits. I highly recommend getting to know her personally. Then we have, seems to be the same course, Wills 001. Obviously, there are no 101s in law school for the most part, but the review here is someone who somehow makes super boring topics interesting. One of the better professors I've had at Pace. Quality of the professor, 4.0. Difficulty, 3.0. If you notice, the quality seems to be rated very high, while generally the difficulty seems to be rated significantly lower. Here, this individual, for the same course, Wills 001, granted a review of a 5.0 for quality and a 1.0 for difficulty. Based on these reviews, which are seemingly all quite good, especially here, Federal Tax 100, Best Professor at Pace Law, a must-take. My assumption would be that the difficulty rating is not based on an easy exam, but more so on the ability of the professor to actually teach the content. So that could be extremely helpful. There may be a very valid reason why one of the sections of your particular course or one of the courses taught by a particular professor is filling up much faster than the other. Some of the other students might know something that you don't know. This is usually where they're finding it. So before you register for your next set of classes, ensure that you take a look at Rate My Professor, read the reviews, and ensure that this particular professor is going to be a right fit for you. Now we're going to move on to Law School Outlines. Take a look at Learn Law Better. He has a fantastic video on how to make law school outlines. We're going to be discussing it and presenting it and reviewing a small portion of it as we go forward here today.
Law school exam grading. First, let's discuss what you should not do when creating an outline. A mistake that many law students make is to take their class notes, rearrange them a bit, and then place them into their outline.
This is a horrible way to address your studying. The reason being, it's in essence the equivalent of rewriting the entirety of the textbook. It's a regurgitation of information. It's usually not especially helpful. More importantly, it's usually not especially helpful for you at exam time when you're attempting to study for an exam, or if you have an open book exam, which many of the law school exams are, the ability for you to find any information within your outline is usually close to non-existent. So having something that's a lot more straightforward, that's more of a direct line to an answer and more of a mind map that you can work with is usually the better route to go. Let's see what Professor Bauer has to say.
That is not an outline, but rather a rearranged set of notes. Also, don't include facts from a case in the outline. The only thing you need in the outline are the rules from the cases.
The facts of the cases usually will be as helpful to you as your old law school textbooks. Don't buy these books, rent them, because they'll be garbage the moment you graduate. You'll never use them or touch them again. Equally, the cases that you in fact study, the facts of those cases, generally are, in essence, absolute garbage when it comes to exam time. What you need to focus on is the rules, what they mean, and how they interplay with one another. Once you have that, there's not much else that you need.
So now let's talk about what should go into an outline. The first thing you need is a framework for the course. I recommend that you take the table of contents from your assigned book or the course syllabus and use that as a starting point.
While I do agree with Professor Bauer here to a degree, I think that it's extremely important to have a little bit more than just a basic skeletal framework. What I would normally do is get a generalized outline, like a commercial outline or something to the fact, something relatively small, something that I can plug my information into, something that as I'm looking at it is kind of giving me a little bit more direction as to what's going to be filled in, what the information is that's required. Because the truth is that especially as a 1L, it may be really easy for me to miss an entirety of a portion of a key issue within a case. It was actually quite commonplace, and I'm sure for those of you who are in your 1L year right now, you can attest to that, that the fact is that for the most part, there are many times where you'll miss an entirety of a portion of a case where your professor subsequently informs you that it's extremely important or something you shouldn't have missed. That is probably the most reoccurring condition during your 1L law school year. So my suggestion would be, yes, start with using some sort of skeletal format from the outline of your book or from the table of contents of your casebook, but better than that, really purchase something like a commercial outline or something of the sort that's geared towards the particular textbook that you're using. We'll look at some of the resources for doing just that in just a little bit.
You might change the format as you go along, but you need to get something to get you going. Second, place the rules that you learned into the outline.
This is extremely important. Again, remember, the facts are usually going to be irrelevant. The rules are really what come into play and which are really what's important here. You don't want to be in a place where you have an outline that's, again, a regurgitation of the information and not very useful for you. This is not helpful. This is not what you want. At the end of the day, all it will do is waste time on your law school exams and cause you to delay and get nervous. These are not things you want. So your law school outline should, in essence, be as simple as could possibly be, contain as little information as could possibly be. And more importantly, these should all be linked together. I kept saying previously the idea of a mind map. The mind maps are absolutely fantastic because you can link with lines and with drawings and with colors exactly which ideas play into one another and are commonly recurring themes. We also have a video on the book Getting to Maybe, which talks about forks in the road, forks in the facts, forks in the law. It's an extremely important video to look at if you haven't as of yet. And if you haven't read the book, then woe is you, really, at this point. But it's a must-read. It's an absolute must-read, and it has been for decades at this point. The reason why it's a must-read is because it very clearly sets out what it is that your law school professor is looking for during the exams and with the questions that they're purposely presenting. The idea being, in short, that there are forks in the road, on each and every single question that you're asked. Those forks can be factual forks or legal forks. So there'll be distinctions in the rules or distinctions in the facts. And those are key things to look at when you're drawing your outline, when you're writing your outline. What forks are commonplace within each particular case, within each particular rule that you're looking at? What are the forks that the professor that you have is focusing on? Those are likely the things that are going to be tested. Now, let's get this straight. The most important thing that you could do during law school is draft a proper outline. We just went through some suggestions on doing just that. Another option would be getting outlines from other students. I usually do recommend securing outlines from your fellow classmates over anything else, most importantly simply because they obviously had your same professor, so they're obviously hearing the same material that you are. Many students will think that it's useless to get an outline from another student on the same exact material that you're writing notes on, that you're drafting your outline on. The reality is it's anything but that. It's a fantastic opportunity to see the exact same rules and the same facts from another person's unique perspective, which, again, as we noted before, it's very easy to miss something during your first year of law school. That 1L year is fraught with errors and omissions and simply missing entire subject areas in certain questions. So it's a fantastic resource to have someone else's brain to pick without actually even having a conversation with them. So I would absolutely advise exchanging outlines, sharing outlines with friends in class, especially friends or other students that you note are doing well in class. Ask questions that are similar to the types of questions that you would like to ask. Also, people that are on a completely different wavelength. There may be individuals who ask questions of significantly greater depth than you. Those are the individuals whose outlines you want. You want someone who has a different perspective, who's giving you a fuller view of the cases that you're in fact now currently studying. Now, if you can't get other students' outlines or your friends' outlines or your classmates' outlines, then there may be another option for you. Many law schools will have organizations within the law school. A lot of them will be based on ethnicity, will be based on interests, will be based on gender, would be based on a multitude of things. It could be that there are organizations for people interested in intellectual property. It could be that there is, without question, a Black and Latino Law Students Association. I know I was a part of it at Cardozo, but there are a ton of different organizations, each of which maintain their own individual outline banks and other information from prior professors. So if you're not able to secure outlines from your classmates or from friends or from anyone else around you in your specific class, it may be beneficial to then seek outlines from organizations such as the ones I mentioned. Usually, while they may not be outlines from your particular professor this particular semester, they may be older outlines, they still will generally have a significant value. And that value could be the difference between scoring a significantly higher grade or lower grade on your exams. Also, as we previously noted, it's always a great idea to have a different perspective when you're attacking these law school outlines and preparing yourself for the exam. So if you're not able to get your classmates' information, if you're not able to share your classmates' outlines, then going to one of these organizations and looking at their outline banks could be a pretty good alternative. Now, if you're not able to do that, or if you want to do something on top of that, we have another option for you. Now, there are also commercially available outlines. Outline Depot is one of the websites that has a tremendous amount of outlines available for you. Usually, when we're talking about these commercial outlines, we're talking about purchasing them. So while the law school organizations generally will have free outlines available to you, or these banks would have free information available to you, generally when you're talking about your classmates, you're usually exchanging information. Outline Depot, in essence, gets right to the heart of it and, in essence, sells the outlines. Let's take a look at some of the outlines available. Let's look at, again, we noted my wife's law school was Pace Law School. Let's see if we can find Pace Law School here. Okay, I found Benjamin and Cardozo. Let's go to Cardozo. Let's go to my alma mater. And now we have a list of classes by professor, and you have a preview available of the outline. You can also download a read-only PDF for 1 credit or download an editable Word document for 2 credits. So obviously they're selling credits and you're purchasing each of the outlines for a set number of valued credits. Now here, the good thing is that they have your particular school, they have the particular course, the particular professor, and the particular class. So it could be that you're able to find things quite close to your current class, or even find your specific class with your specific professor. That being said, this was a very good resource that I utilized during law school myself, and that I had my wife use as well during her law school experience. So I think that it could be quite helpful for you. The caveat here is relatively simple. Do not assume that the material presented is going to translate 100% to your particular course. There will be discussions, there will be presentations that vary class by class, semester by semester, group by group. Although keep in mind that most of the law school exams, they're pre-written or they're set on a particular set of facts that generally don't necessarily heavily get influenced by the class discussion. The class discussion is usually a great way of flushing out the key issues and the questions to be asked. But the fact that you're flushing out the questions slightly differently in your group doesn't necessarily affect the question that's to be asked. So that being said, Outline Depot can be a resource to secure outlines, to look at your class and your professor from a different perspective. As we previously noted before, it's a great idea to have a relatively flushed outline to begin with, something that you can slowly replace and add to as you go along. Pre-purchasing a commercial outline such as at a place such as Outline Depot is a great way to do that. Now let's look at Outline Depot a bit further. We have textbooks. Let's take a look at that. Now, here we have 19,306 textbooks. So it could easily be that your textbook falls into these outlines, and it might be a good idea if you have no information on your particular professor and you don't have the ability to download or purchase an outline specifically done for your particular professor on a prior class, then it might be a good idea to start with an outline of your textbook. And in essence, take it from there and fill it out as you go along during class. Here we have Cases and Material on Torts by Richard A. Epstein and Catherine N. Sharkey. Let's take a look at where that takes us. So we have different schools that are utilizing that particular book for Torts 1 and Torts 2, different professors, and you have the ability to preview as well as purchase those outlines for a particular set of credits. Let's move on from Outline Depot now. And we have ilrg.com, student outlines. Now, ILRG is not a resource that I had available to me or that I knew of during my law school experience. It, in essence, breaks down classes by course, school, textbook being used, professor giving the course, and you can click on any of these, and let's see where it takes us. I'm clicking on Administrative Law, and it in essence takes us, looks like, directly to the outline. So this resource I did not have to log into, I did not have to pay for, I did nothing other than simply click on the outline itself. Let's see if it's a full copy of the outline. And let's get to the bottom of it. Looks like it's quite a few pages, and it looks like it is actually quite full of material. Doesn't seem to be anything missing or any section. Many resources will at some point note that you have to pay in order to go any further or to receive the remainder of information. I'm scrolling down to the very bottom of the outline to see if there's anything of the sort here, and it looks simply as if it ends with an actual rule and with an actual case and the brief of that case. So it seems as if ILRG will in fact grant you access to full outlines, which is without question a fantastic resource. Let's take a look at some of the more common 1L courses that you would have. Here we go. We have Civ Pro. We have Civ Pro with the University of Texas, Professor Sherman. Let's click on that and see if that, well, it's actually asking us to download it. Let's see what the download takes us to. It takes us to an outline, civil procedure, 1995 to 1996. I'm not sure that the information changes much in classes such as civil procedure, so while that date, 1995 to 1996, might seem stale, it may actually, in fact, be anything but that. At the very least, as previously noted, it's a good start. So here we have a resource that seemingly is granting us information, which is for no fee, which is always a good thing. Let's scroll again towards the bottom of this outline. The format looks quite a bit different. I think that it would probably be fine in printed format, if not the text just being a bit small. That can easily be remedied given the fact that you're in an RTF format. You can, in essence, copy and paste this to a Word document or to a PDF document, and there should be no issue with that. So that being said, it looks as if ILRG is a fantastic resource that allows you access to prior outlines based on school, based on professor, and again, it may be that you don't have access to your particular professor at your particular school, but once you're initially commencing the outline, it may be a good idea to start with something. Now, let's look at the final commercial outline website, which I enjoyed. Outline Gurus. Outline Gurus is a very interesting site. It's a bit different than the others. It actually allows you to upload your own, take a look here, your own outlines for your own particular course and your own particular professor, and you can earn up to $30 each time that they're sold to another student. So you could theoretically perpetually receive income, so long as your professor is teaching the course at your school. And even then, as we just mentioned, sometimes people will purchase the outlines of a course simply because it's an entrance, in essence, a beginning. And that is what I would, without question, suggest. Get yourself some commercial outline, use that commercial outline as the basis for your own outline, and in essence, slowly rewrite it or edit it or add to it as you go along. While you're doing that, see if you can secure outlines from your fellow law students and do exactly the same thing. Flush out your outline. Pick up on things that maybe you missed while you were writing your notes. I have a surprise for you. The likelihood of you missing something is pretty high. Even if you didn't miss anything, it may be that another student expresses or views the same exact material a bit differently, and once you're reviewing their outline, you get a different perspective on the same exact material. That is invaluable. The last and final tip I have for you is probably the very absolute best. The most knowledge that I and every other practicing attorney that I've ever spoken to will tell you the most amount of law that they ever learned was during their bar exam preparation phase. It doesn't compare. The amount of law, the volume, the understanding that you will gain during your bar prep time is 10 times greater than what you'll ever learn in law school. So my suggestion, based on that fact, is simply secure bar prep material really early on. Do so during your 1L year. Do so during the first week of your 1L year. Do so before you get to your 1L year. Use those bar prep outlines as outlines for your course. They will help you understand the material to a level which no other law student will at that point. They will help you understand the material to a significantly higher level, more so that of a practicing attorney. They will also address questions of law, questions of fact. How do they play into one another? How does one rule affect another, etc.? The material is presented in such a much clearer format where it's just a tremendous benefit to anyone reviewing the material. So my first, best, and last, because I saved the best for last on this video, suggestion would be ensure that you secure bar prep materials. And when I say that, don't talk to me about commercially available things available at a bookstore. I'm talking about purchasing the books for Bar Brief, for Quimby, for any of these bar prep type of programs. Now, they may be rather expensive if you're purchasing them currently, but generally most people, once they use them, they put them up for sale on eBay or somewhere. So that being said, my best and final suggestion is get yourself onto eBay, purchase someone's old bar prep material, and utilize them the entirety of your law school career. It will without question be worth the few $100s that you'll pay someone to take those heavy books off of their hands. Again, these are books that they will never use again in the entirety of their lives. So the value to them is actually quite low. They're more than happy to get rid of the books more than anything. So if you are able to secure books from a prior law student, it doesn't matter how old they may be, a year or two, that's fine. The material for the bar exam doesn't change all that much. Either way, your understanding of the material, even if you have an outline that's a little bit older, is going to be so far above everyone else that you're going to be coasting. So I wish you luck. I hope that you enjoyed this presentation, and I hope more importantly that you received some value of the presentation. If you did, please share it with your student, with your fellow classmates or your fellow law students. If not, I understand completely why you wouldn't want to do that, but more importantly, comment down below. Also, please, if you have any tips yourself, anything that you yourself learned during your law school experience, or anything that you have questions on, please feel free to comment down below. We are quite responsive, and either myself or my partner, which is my wife, will respond relatively immediately. Again, wish you the best of luck, and thank you for joining us on this journey with Bartend.